Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Smeshwar Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. Today we're going to talk about 2024 and predictions. Just out of curiosity, actually just a little bit ago this morning, I went online, YouTube and that, just to see what different people were saying their predictions. And it was kind of interesting. I think obviously you don't need to be a Jyotishi, or you don't need to be a psychic, or just common sense. If you just watch the news and you see what's going on, there's your prediction for 2024. You know, Scotty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
More of the same.
What's that?
More of the same.
Yeah, I mean, those conflicts aren't going to resolve anytime soon. And whichever way the chip falls on so many things, like, okay, for example, border. If they close the border, half the country is going to be furious. If they keep it open, the other half is going to be furious. The elections, I mean, let's face it, whoever wins the upcoming presidential election, the other half is going to be furious. And it just goes like that. Every issue you can think of, everything is so polarized. Israel, Hamas, Ukraine, whatever shakes out with that. So we're in for a lot of conflict, and there's a thing in Jyotish. I don't think many Jyotishis know this, but there's a principle that's really important for the world, global forecasting, if you will. And that is that I think it's a 60-year cycle. And it's very accurate about what's going on in that particular year. 2024 is the year of anger. And again, you don't need to be a Jyotishi or a psychic or anything to see that. It's just obvious, you know. So there's your predictions for 2024. But there's one thing that is really the most important thing. And from all the, I looked at different websites, Jyotishis and, Edgar Casey and different things. And none of them mentioned this. But it's the most important thing. And we've been talking about it for years, really. And that's that we're in the phase transition, just like, Lord Krishna told Mother Divine 5,000 years ago, this is a time when we're going to be going into a brief period of Sat Yuga, a golden age right in the middle of Kali Yuga, the age of ignorance. And that's what's happening. And like I said, there's that moment of turbulence where, for example, water gets colder and colder and it gets more and more coherent, more and more orderly. But then right before it turns to ice crystals, which is a very orderly structure, it just gets crazy for a while. And that's what's going on. And I mean, because you could say, well, yeah, there's always been wars and fighting. And I agree with that, obviously. But the level of craziness of the issues now, it's over the top. And again, things are so polarized. To tell you the truth, I don't even want to say what those crazy things are. Because, again, the world is so divided. If you're pro-woke, then the anti-wokes get really upset with you and vice versa. And the whole thing that happened with Harvard and the president there, and whatever side you take, you got 50% of the country furious, So let's just look at the big picture. And what's going to happen? Nature is going to organize. There's going to be this phase transition to a golden age. And then we'll find out what is more in harmony with nature. Is the woke mentality more harmony with nature, or is the more conservative approach more in harmony with nature? All that will shake out. Everything will become more orderly. politics in the United States, global confrontations. And we will know it's going to be actually more than just 2024. It's going to be well into 2025. And then at some point there, we're going to start to see the transition into a more golden age. That's what's going on, you know. Anything you want to add to that, Scotty?
Well, what I'm wondering is where you think we are in that. You know, like if we look at like we've been on a downward slide. You know, are we towards the? Are we at the bottom of that? Are we at the approach to the bottom of that? Are we past the bottom of it and on our way up a little bit? We're still in the bottom, obviously, because everybody is like going nuts and not realizing that when you don't work together, you know, there's problems. But
yeah, well, as you know, it's not actually a particular point. It's more a time period.
Yeah.
And we're in that time period. But I remember Maharshi said that when he heard that people were saying God is dead, I can't, you know, it's funny to even say that out loud. One, it pains me. And on the other hand, it makes me laugh because it's so ridiculous. You know, it's such a overt misunderstanding of the whole nature of existence and how people use the word God, you know. But at any rate, he said that when he heard that, he realized that we have entered the depths of Kali Yuga, that deepest place of darkness. And that was some time ago. So you could say it started years ago and we're still in it. And it's going to be another couple of years, you know, year and a half at least, before we start to see it really turn around. There will be things that happen before then and people will say, oh, see, we were right and things are turning around. Oh, thank God so-and-so won the election. But it won't become clear to the world and to the nation that we're on the right track right away. Because again, whoever wins the election, the other half is going to be furious. So there's going to be conflict for a while. Is that responsive, Scotty?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hatha Yoga, flexibility. This is a very interesting thing. And I posted in the blog here, you'll see when you go to michaelmamas.net announcing this podcast. I posted 2 YouTube links that if you're at all interested in Hatha Yoga and stretching and flexibility, it is well worth your time to take a look at those too. The idea is that tight muscles isn't about the muscles. It's about the nervous system. And the idea is, you know, there's a protagonist and antagonist. Like, you know, when the bicep flexes, the other one stretches. And when the tricep contracts, then the bicep stretches. So they do the opposite. They have an opposite effect. But the interesting thing is that in the tendon of the attachment for each of those muscles, there's something called, what is it, Golgi apparatus, something like that. And I remember studying that, years ago, back when I was a kid in vet school, you know, veterinary medicine. But at any rate, what that does is it tells the muscle what to do. And the idea is that it protects the muscle so that if you're going to try to lift up something that's too heavy and would damage the muscle, it's that nervous system then that signals the muscles to contract and tighten up and don't do it. And, you know, and it's uncomfortable, it hurts, and so you don't try to pick that thing up. But what you can do, and they call it, you know, like they have computer hacking, you can hack the nervous system because it becomes a habit. And then that's when somebody says, oh, I'm tight. Well, it's because the nervous system is signaling the muscles to stay tight. And so what these 2 links that I posted are about is how to reverse that so that you can develop more flexibility and the muscles then become healthier. Like they say, a stretched muscle is a healthy muscle. But, you know, to my experience, in my opinion, I'm not a Hatha Yoga teacher or anything like that, but just speaking personally, this is it. This, if you want to get flexible, it's worth taking a look at. Did you look at that, Scotty? I think I mentioned it. Yeah. What'd you think?
I like it.
The other thing I'm working with, we all have our chronic aches and pains. I've had, my lower back has tended to tighten ever since I was in high school, not often, but from time to time. And I realized just recently that what it is, it's all in the feet, and our feet, the subtle structures of our feet are very different from person to person. And so some people have arches that are too high, too low. The heel can be asymmetrical from right to left, And so I'm gonna try something. I'm trying to not get too into details here that would bore people about my personal life, but I'm going to go to a podiatrist and get an insole specifically for my bone structure. I know that my neighbor Todd is a chiropractor, great chiropractor, and I just got sort of a insole, but not really the greatest. But it was good, and it kind of corrected that somewhat. And he even noticed. He saw me walking and said, "Wow, you're walking different, way better." And so I think if you get the feet just right, can adjust the alignment of the whole musculoskeletal system all the way up into the head. So I'm going to try it, and I'll try to remember to. And Scotty, you could remind me, whatever. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a Panditji and Lakshmi are going to India. That's the temple, Sri Someshwara temple, Pandit and his wife, Lakshmi. And they're going to India, and they're going to go to Banaras, Varanasi. And there's a world peace Havan there with 13 fully trained pundits. And I emphasize fully trained. It's well known in the Vedic literature that the power of a Havan is a function of how evolved and how experienced, if you will, the pundits are. And so a lot of the Havans and pujas and things that are done, these guys aren't even really fully trained pundits, And I'm not saying that's bad, but it's good. But it's not as powerful as if you have a fully trained Brahmin pundit, So at any rate, they're going to go there and do that. I think it's 5 days. I was invited to go with them. I would love to. I mean, Havans with all those pundits chanting in Banaras, that would be fabulous. But really, I'm just too busy with Mount Soma, particularly in this month of January, because we're finishing up the remodeling of the kitchen, and I have to be here, So anyway, I'm sorry we're missing that, Scotty. I invited Scotty to go with me, but you're in the same boat, just too much going on, Yeah. All right, so let's move on to some of these quotes. I'm really enjoying that website. I have the link there that I've sent to you, and I posted it too in the podcast notes that you'll see it. michaelmouse.net. But these are interesting quotes, which I'm having a hard time seeing because there we go. Oh yeah, this one's interesting. The first one, this one's from the Shiva Puranas. I'm sorry, the Shiva Sutras, and basically what it's saying is that when a person gets established in the transcendent, then their willpower. What is willpower really? It's Shakti, it's life force. And talks about there's a production or creation of bodies according to the yogi's desire. Now that's an interesting quote, because what do we really mean by bodies there? And again, there's this whole, and this illustrates so nicely that there are different levels to existence, and there are different levels of interpretation and understanding, each valid on its own level. But every verse in the Veda, every verse in Vedic literature can be seen on these different levels and understood on these different levels. On the most grandiose level, I mean, if you have a yogi who's really fully established, fully integrated, mind, body, the whole thing, living in harmony with nature, a hugely evolved state, then they can create actual physical bodies according to their will. There's plenty about that in Vedic literature and that. And so we're into the arena of bilocation and that sort of a thing. For me, that's I've heard it, I believe it, it's in the Vedic literature, but I am not there, But there's another level of interpretation on this that I can really relate to, and I think it's really beautiful. And that is that, and I've talked about this when I talked about the Brahma Sutras, for example. When you're looking at your computer, I always use the analogy of the pillow that's over there in front of me. That pillow, I am that pillow. That's an experience that a person can have. And so that pillow is my body. And anything you look at, the computer, I am that computer. It is my body. I mean, it's that kind of relationship. Not theory, but just direct experience. When it first happens, it's overwhelming. And you could say when a person is established in that, that's Brahmi Chaitana, that's Brahma Chaitana, that's Brahman consciousness. They say the highest level of consciousness, but there are levels of refinement to it. In fact, they'll talk about cosmic consciousness, and then there's refined cosmic consciousness when you lower levels of relative existence until you see the celestial level. That's true. Then there's unity consciousness, where you are the object of your perception. You are one with that. And there's Brahman consciousness, where you're one with everything. And it's like all at the same time, it cascades out. Everything simultaneously is one with everything else, like that. One with the Atma, one with yourself. We'll get into that in the next, one of the next two verses. But the point is, there are different levels of interpretation. And arguably, in fact, I think most accurately, there's really only one level of enlightenment. There's only one enlightenment. And you could say that's when cosmic consciousness happens. I think I talked about that other, there's another, I think it's in the Shiva sutras, where they talk about Bhairava, normally depicted as the vicious manifestation of Shiva into the relative, but it's Shiva. And the thing is, when that one enlightenment I'm talking about, when that first happens, it just blows everything out of the water. It's huge. It's a whoa. And it's something that is overwhelming. And that's the only enlightenment there is. But what happens, it's like when you walk into a cave, I've talked about this before, and it's dark. So you don't really see anything. It takes time for the eyes to adjust. And as the eyes adjust, that relates to, that parallels the idea of, after you enter enlightenment, there's a long process of refining, the eyes adjusting, if you will, the physiology adjusting, even the mind and the psyche and the whole physiology, just adjusting, adjusting, adjusting to what's already happened. So there's one enlightenment, but there's more and more levels of refinement until it completely overtakes with seamless integration, all levels out here with a yogi, with all the supernatural powers, if you will, that come with that are described in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I think I kind of covered the second one in what I just said. But the idea there, just to say it briefly in the next sutra, is that in these higher states of consciousness, in we can say Brahmachetana, and we all have a sense of this, the interconnection of things and how things can come together. You can bring things together. You can relate different aspects of life, like how does math relate to music and business. I mean, so you start to see the coming together of things. At the same time, you see the separating out of them. You can look at math as a pure thing. You can look at music as a pure thing, independent even. And so you can separate things out and you can assemble things. And then you can assemble everything together and you end up with the universe, Vishva. Now, the point here, though, that I want to make is that even that has different levels of understanding, levels of interpretation, levels of experience based on a person's level of consciousness. So, on one level, we could read this, say, oh, yeah, I get that. Yeah, we can separate out math and music and blah, blah. But we're speaking of very profound levels of evolution here, where it becomes a completely different experience that really can't be conveyed. It has to be experienced. I thought that was a very nice sutra. One more from the Shiva Sutras here, and then we'll move on to a few others. Oh, yeah. This one talks about full mastery over the collective group of powers. And they say chakras is achieved by the yogi through enlightenment. But now there's a very important point here, and that is that we're talking about the chakras, and we're talking about the integration of the chakras. But it's important to keep in mind that where does that integration come from? Because a lot of times we think of healing our chakras. People talk about putting crystals or different mantras to open different chakras and things like that. And that all has a value for sure, if it's done properly. And that's an important point. But where it really comes from isn't from isn't from healing in that sense, but it's from awakening to that deepest level within your own self, and then it wells up through the different levels of physiology. And that's where real healing comes from. And these are just beautiful. All these sutras. My favorite thing, really, I think my favorite thing in the world, perhaps, I've always said my favorite emotion is fascination. I'd love to get up 2 a.m, sit down in my armchair, or even sit up in bed or whatever, and just read the Upanishads, one quote, one line, one verse at a time, Brahma Sutra, Shiva Sutra, and just reflect on them. Because what happens in that settled state is you go even more deeply. And then also, as I've said, to read it in the Sanskrit is beautiful. Because what is Sanskrit? We've talked about the absolute, and it's all contained within ah, and then I-E, u, re, o, like that, o, and then and that's atma. But we've talked about then that oneness becomes multiplicity, and so contained in the structure, contained within wholeness is the structure of multiplicity. where was I going with that, Scotty?
The levels, different levels of things. Experience. How that experience changes, maybe. And then the Sanskrit has a different effect.
I was going to make a point about it. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter though, because it's that the idea of that multiplicity. Oh, because that's where the structure comes from. Yeah, and that's where the chakras then are structured within those finest elemental levels, and that's called, and it comes out first as sound, shruti. And what is sound? What is shruti? It's those syllables, e, u, and then all the consonants, ka, chai, like that. And those are like point values, right? When the oneness collapses down into a point, a point, a point. And those point values are what? They're the Sanskrit letters. And they have, so they have a sound and they have the corresponding structure. So when you're reading Sanskrit, it's directly accessing those subtlest impulses, those point values that underlie everything in manifestation. And it's just such a fantastic experience, which I love to do it, when it's like 2 a.m, sitting in my armchair, reading the sutras and just reflecting on them, reading them in Sanskrit, feeling that you're feeling the shruti impulses flowing through your physiology. It's not unlike listening to the Vedic chants, but it is different, it's because it's actually looking at the Sanskrit letters, But that's why, boy, Scotty, if we could have gone to Benares, Varanasi, to be there with all those pundits in the ancient city, Dona Havan, it would have been incredible. And to hear them all chanting together, I mean, it all just wells up through the physiology. It's just, that's ecstasy, it's just the most ecstatic experience you can imagine, really. Anyway, we did the Kumbhabhishekam recently. We had that many pundits here at Mount Soma, and they would chant, and it was just unbelievable. They wanted to come back every year, so who knows, Scotty? Maybe we'll do it again coming up soon. So just a few more from the Upanishads here that I just thought were so beautiful. I wanted to share them with you. One says, oh, this is an interesting one. It says, certainly fear is born of duality. Now, that's an interesting thing, because to me, the implication there, or what somebody could infer from that, is that if you have fear, you're not enlightened, you're not in the pudding, you're not. And what it's really saying then is that even in the state of enlightenment, you're awakened to a level of your being that's free from fear, because it's not duality. But it's inherent in the nature of duality to have affinity, aversion, fear. And that's just where I went with this. And I thought it was beautiful, Certainly fear is born of duality. Okay, next one. Oh, I liked this one quite a bit. Manifest diversity is unmanifest. There is nothing else. Now we could, you hear that on theoretical level. Oh yeah, I get that. It's all God, it's all oneness. This is all Maya. But again, on a deeper level, it's like that's an experience, and you still see the walls, you still see the room, you still see the pillow, but it's so lightly etched on the face of oneness, on the face of being. And it's like being, I've talked about this in the past, where this whole plane of existence, if you will, it's almost like a little window, or a little, what do they call them, Scotty, like a fissure or whatever in a crystal, where you hold it a certain way and you can see inside the crystal a little rainbow. reflecting on some little facet within the crystal.
Inclusion.
Like kind of like an inclusion. But the thing is, that's how this whole universe appears. It's just like one pane, one thin veil. Lightly etched, transparently almost etched on the face of being. And in that state, it's kind of like, well, why can't I just put my hand through this table, you know? Because it's so transparent. I thought it was beautiful. One last one. Oh, yeah, this is important. All this is Atma only, the Atma. Now, on one level, oh, yeah, okay, the Atma, I am that, I heart that, all this is nothing but that. I get it, I'm the Atma, and I'm one with everything. But more importantly, as an experience, everything we talked about, it all goes through the individual. The universe, you are the Atma, your Atma. And so that's the angle of entry into everything. It all goes through the Atma. And your Atma is your interface with everything. And so even when you, okay, I am that pillow. I am that chair. You can say the chair is the totality. The chair is God. Everything emerges out of the chair. You could say, okay, the pillow is God. The pillow is everything. Everything emerges out of that pillow. But how do you know that? What's the experience of the chair? It goes through the Atma. What's the experience of the pillow? It goes through the Atma. How then, if the pillow is the totality, and if the chair is the totality, why not just go from the chair straight to the pillow? The chair is the pillow. The chair is the pillow. Well, it's valid, but it goes through the Atma. It goes through the Atma. I am that chair, okay. I am that pillow, okay. The pillow is the chair. It does a certain kind of a brain tweak a little bit because the process of the experience goes through the Atma. Does that make sense, Scotty?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Your Atma. Awaken to the Atma. Awaken to the depth of your being on that level. And it's a physiological state. And within that physiological state, experience and knowledge ceases to be facts memorized, becomes something deeper, pure knowingness. And when those two meet and merge seamlessly as one, that's the level of the depth of your being. That's the Atma. And that is how you have the knowledge, the real knowledge of the pillow. That is how you have the real knowledge of the chair. And that's how it all comes together within you. Beautiful. I think it's beautiful, huh, Scotty?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. All right. Well, I think that's it. Happy New Year, everyone. And it's a great time to be alive. You know, we're really fortunate because not only are we going to, if we can just stick around for a little while, not only are we going to see Hatha Yoga, but we're going to experience the transition from Kali Yuga to Hatha Yoga. Very, very rare and grand, because you're experiencing the full spectrum of existence, from A to Ga, you know, from one polar up, one extreme to the other. It's a great time to be alive. And the next few years are going to be incredible. So we are very fortunate to be here. All right, I guess that's it for now. Thanks for listening, and we will talk with you again next week.